Recording.
Okay, call to order water supply meeting for the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District for Monday, August the 1st, 2022 at 3:02. Roll call.
Committee Member Paul,
Here.
Committee Member Riley,
Here.
Chair Edwards.
Here. All
All
right,
committee members are present.
thank you. Next action is comments from the public. Any public out there today?
We have 3 so far.
Yes, this portion of the agenda is to allow for general public comment for matters not listed on today's agenda. Public comment on matters listed on today's agenda will be heard during the time they are presented. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes in length, and please use the raise hand function on the Zoom application. And if you're calling in, push *9 to indicate to me that you wish to make public input. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
All right, thank you. Our next item is the action item. Consider adoption of the April 4th, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Just one comment about the minutes. There's a couple places where it's a little bit garbled, and this is not a substantive, I don't have substantive corrections, and I think I understand it well enough that it's comprehensible. But if you could look at under item 4, that last paragraph it's just a little garbled. It just needs a little bit of editing for clarity. It's a bit run-on sentence and so on, and a little bit the same with item number 8. So I don't think it's worth taking up everyone's time with editing this during a committee meeting, but maybe that could be just fixed before they're finalized.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chair. I mean,
No, I just wanted to make one correction myself. I know you want to check and make sure we read these things, but I adjourned that meeting on that day.
and not Riley. That was my comment too.
Yeah. So we doing our homework. So those 2 corrections. Any more? Okay, let's take it out to the public, see if they have any.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 1, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, push *9. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Okay. Any more questions from the board?
I just want to add a comment that I think these narrative minutes are very good in general, and I'm glad to see them. It's a nice reminder when I read them from a month earlier or so. And anyway, they're good minutes outside of a few things here and there sometimes.
I agree, and I do rely on them too to remind myself. Sometimes there's a couple months between meetings, and yeah, they're useful for a lot of purposes. And yeah, I agree, they're generally good. So I move we adopt the minutes with the corrections that we've discussed.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Just a quick comment from me. I agree with you all. They're good meetings. Joel might just have to go back and review the tape once we do. I do every chance a meeting. I review the tape, see what was said. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Riley,
Aye.
Committee Member Paul,
Yes.
Chair Edwards,
Yes,
the motion passes.
thank you. Next item.
The next item begins our list of discussion items. This is an update on the Sand City wells. Probably should just say well at this point. There's a test well and a production well plan. I included a map with the as the exhibit. For those of you who've ever driven the frontage road back there as a shortcut from Costco to Home Depot, that would be the road we're talking about, Sand Dunes Drive. The yellow is the proposed production well. And I think the last sentence in the staff note sums it up pretty accurately, that they plan to get well drilling done, outbid by the end of the calendar year, and have it all complete in late 2023. So not a firm date, but probably around the third quarter. That well at 200 to 300 gallons per minute with no reject water would be well over the capacity of the plant. With reject water, it would be about 200 acre feet per year at a 50% reject rate. So that could be a very productive addition to the project, and that's really what's needed to make it better achieve its full capacity. I'll take any questions. I probably can't answer any more than what's written in the staff note.
I have a couple questions in general. It seems to me when this was first approved and came online, it was highly productive. It wasn't maybe 2 years before it began to encounter trouble. And I'm not sure of my time frame here, but that's kind of my memory in general. But my question really is, and it was the first desal facility approved by the Coastal Commission on the entire coast of California. So it was an early forerunner of just the whole issue around desal facilities. Anyway, my question generally is this: have there been any lessons learned by either the city or Sand City or Seaside or Coastal Commission or us about brackish water desals and right at the coastline and that kind of thing?
Yeah, there are a variety of brackish water desal inland in California and in Texas, as an example. One of the key things is that you're taking in water that's lower in sodium, and so your discharge is roughly the sodium level of seawater, which is why it can be discharged into the beach. What happens is when your waste discharge permit is written for that level of total dissolved solids or salts, there's some expectation that you're going to have normal rainfall. And when you enter into a drought period, you don't have as much diluent, natural rainfall. And so the intakes increase in salinity. So I think we're learning about the role of fresh water in the brackish water mix. So I think that's a learning. To your point, this came on in 2010, but 2011 was the first full year. The nameplate capacity was 300 acre feet per year. That was its best year. It only achieved 276 acre feet that year, 242 the next year, and then less in 2013-14, but then back up to 245 and 15. The last 4 years, it's only averaged 172 acre feet through the year ending 2021. So what that tells us is that your ratios that are approved in the discharge really affects what you can expect on the intake side. And if you can't get to where you need to be on the intake side, you're going to lose capacity in the plant. We offered entitlements against this project. In the district's ordinance, we do have a clause that allows us to reduce the amount of available entitlements to the city of Sand City based on performance. So I think we're in kind of a wait and see moment to get the new well online and get another many months or a year of new operations behind. But it may be that the best expectations can never be met, and it might be a 200 acre foot per year plant rather than a 300 acre foot per year plant.
Well, I guess the drought and the lack of rainfall not only affects this kind of operation, but the Watermaster, the Seaside Groundwater Basin, as well as other places as well. But at least that's the nearby stuff that we're mostly.
Sand City getting all this water right now from the desal plant, correct? Or is it still going through the system, through CalAm system?
Yeah, it's going through the system. Sand City's pulled down about just over 5 acre-feet of their entitlement. And there's a little bit of a disagreement between how we view Sand City as a long-term resource and how CalAm is viewing it. If you look at what's driving water demand on the Monterey Peninsula, it's a combination of people, population increase, so residential water use, and commercial. And Sand City will develop both housing and more commercial uses. CalAm is in effect saying, well, they only get to count 94 acre-feet on the project. And we would say, no, you can count all of the output because you're operating it, it goes into your system. And as long as you include the demand on the demand side, you should include all of the supply on the supply side. And so it currently is just flowing into the CalAm system. We've done our accounting to say, well, yeah, a little over 5 goes against the entitlement, which means that all of the rest, not just 94 acre-feet, is available to CalAm for any use. So anyway, it's flowing into the system. But
Okay, the reason I'm concerned about Sand City right now is because they're about to start building again. They're clearing land off and driving over there, looking at it, and they're about to start a big project. I want to make sure that we're managing the resource, that they can do it, and we don't come up with problems because over the next couple of years.
yeah, and you're talking about south of Tioga?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's been in the paper. They cleared with fishing game and everything. So I think they're getting ready over there. So I want to make sure that they have water and we have water and we're managing the system. That's
right.
That's our big thing. So any other questions on this one? If not, let's open it up to the public, Joel. Find out if they have any comments.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, push *9. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Thank you. What's the next item, Jim?
The next one is just a brief progress report on the ASR well number 1 non-availability. As you know, we notified CalAm that ASR well number 1 would be taken offline back in roughly August of 2021. That was followed by a formal letter from the State Department of Drinking Water in September of 2021, reiterating that its status would be inactive until such further notice. Once we got through the tracer tests or the retention time studies, we made a determination that for the benefit of the water supply project, Pure Water Monterey, that ASR 1 would remain offline. And that created a controversy and a dispute resolution situation. We have a dispute resolution meeting coming up tomorrow, which we'll be able to report back after that. But there was some discussion about some activities that could take place looking at physical solutions. I've highlighted those in the staff note with the bullet points. I can tell you that internally and with Monterey One Water, we did talk about the idea of looking at a injection regime where there'd be less injection at different wells to kind of improve the travel time. That amount of modeling and the revisions to the engineering report and the eventual reading and issuing of a permit by the state DDW and then ultimately the regional board for the waste discharge requirements, is a very lengthy process. And all we have done at this point, and that we'll be able to report back during our dispute resolution, is what that timeline would be. It's really not a great solution because it creates a permitting regime unlike what the regulators are used to. And if you can't make it look like what they've done before, it's often a challenge to get it done. So that's not really preferable. We have been looking into, and actually Monterey One Water's task with this is to look at accelerating new injection wells for the expansion. You know, we have 2 new injection wells that are targeted, injection wells 5 and 6. The other alternative would be to accelerate new extraction wells from Pure Water Monterey expansion. So there's extraction wells 1 and 2 located on the borderline of the Seaside Middle School and the Bayonet Black Horse Golf Course. That's one that Cal-Am is supposed to be moving along. Our understanding is that the school district, Monterey Peninsula Unified, has not yet made a decision on access to that site. And there's been a little bit of recent inactivity. The evaluating timing and cost of mercury treatment at ASR well number 4 is underway. We're told that treatment will come in on skids in October. And our understanding also is that if you do add treatment, it's almost instantaneous that you get DDW approval to then use that treated water for potable supply. Interconnecting the Peralta well to the Monterey pipeline was completed. And then a subsequent action was that Cal-Am had to get approval to then put that water into the pipeline for potable supply, and that was approved recently. So that's a good thing. Looking at new substitute or replacement wells, that's something that John and Maureen have had some discussions with City of Seaside and Cal-Am about. Cal-Am's also been tasked with looking at some of its existing locations and alternatives. We'll learn more about that in our meeting tomorrow. Emergency water transfers by Marina Coast Water District to Cal-Am. Marina Coast Water District about 6 weeks ago did approve a negotiating team to talk to Cal-Am about the possibility of selling water through their emergency interconnect. And then there has been some inquiry to the state about a temporary urgency change petition to increase Carmel River withdrawals. I can tell you that didn't really go over well with the State Water Board, but it does show that they're all talking about us back there. The Deputy Director of Water Rights was very curious about what was going on with ASR well number 1 and was very interested to learn if these other physical measures could resolve it, because he doesn't think it's not a very good thing to get down to your legal limit on the river and then ask to exceed it on an emergency basis within 1 year. I think it would be a bad look for Cal-Am as well as for the district and the public partners. And then finally, I did make an inquiry with Pebble Beach Company about, in effect, renting their entitlement for 2 to 3 years for compensation. I've mentioned Cal-Am, they haven't taken it any further, mostly because they will want to go to the State Water Board first. And even though it would be completely allowable under all the legal agreements, it would be tantamount to increasing withdrawals off the Carmel River, but through Pebble Beach's entitlement rather than through an emergency change petition. So anyway, we will learn more tomorrow. We've strongly encouraged all the parties to focus on these physical solutions rather than trying to end up in court. As you know, you've been apprised in closed session of what our legal strategy is and where we think we stand. And just suffice to say publicly, we feel we've got a very strong position, and we'll just leave it at that. It is our well, and that has certain rights and privileges as well. So that's about all I can tell you.
Committee questions? Go ahead,
Karen,
Karen.
A very basic one. Is ASR well used for injection year round or just?
No, the injection season is December 1 through May 30th.
Okay, so it's Carmel River.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the whole concept is when the river's flowing most heavily, it has excess water, so you can take it and move it. And it's withdrawal season, depending on which wells you've injected in. John, you can jump in here anytime, but there's always a chlorine residual issue that you need to have a period of rest between your last injection and your first withdrawal. But if you've injected at ASR well number 1 or well number 2, it's less of an issue to withdraw from, the same water accounting to withdraw from ASR well number 3 or well number 4. And by virtue of now intertying the Peralta well to the Monterey pipeline, the company will also be more able to take more pure water Monterey water from that well than they previously were able to do.
Thank you.
All right, Director Rowley, go ahead.
less of a question, series of questions, but a series of kind of guideline questions, not just outcome questions, maybe they're related to outcome. Which option allows the greatest control by the district? Okay, that's just, I just have a bias that we will do things at less expense than Cal-Am, and therefore, what might we be able to do rather than Cal-Am? Well, that's point number one. Which is the second related to which has the lowest cost? Which of these options? Third, which is the fastest? Fourth, which is the least permitting barriers or steps along the way? And then my last question is, which is the least complicated?
Yeah. So the two that are quickest and least complicated have been done or in progress. That's the tying Peralta in with the Monterey pipeline. And that was done because we did spot that it had not been fully utilized and there was excess capacity. So that's been done. The second easiest is something we've been urging the company to do for 6 years, and that's to put some form of treatment in place or operate a little bit differently to minimize the mercury readings at ASR well number 4. And it looks like that one's moving along. It would be cheaper for us to build, to accelerate the 2 new injection wells for Pure Water Monterey than it is to build the 2 new extraction wells by Cal-Am. And that's just based on cost estimates and what we saw in the testimony that Cal-Am is seeking recovery from in rates. But operationally, it makes more sense for them to build extraction capacity than it does for us to accelerate injection capacity. So I think we'd rather have them have the capability to extract more water and have redundancy than have us have to continue to pick which wells we want to inject into at what season, at what amounts, and so forth. It doesn't really make it easier. It just gives you options to not use wells that are closer to ASR 1 and use wells that are further away. But that's kind of it. And then the other easy one would be a substitute well or a replacement well. And I think the first site that we were optimistic on turns out to be a little too close to the pure water injection field. So then it falls maybe to Cal-Am to look at its own sites And that is one where we put a little bit of money in the budget. You ought to be able to get a driller, you know, apart from how busy they are, but you ought to be able to get a driller and get a well done within a year. And it's not excessively costly if it's not like an ASR well where you want to be able to inject and extract at the same well site at different times in the year.
Well, that's where I want to go right there. We do a extraction well. You know, we do a ASR 1 in another area over there near in the Marina Coast Seaside area, Marina Costa area, and we drill that and we use that. That's the well that I like to see us drill. We got to do injection and recovery out of that well instead of like ASR 1 well is the well of the future that we should be drilling. So
yeah, I think we're going to be geographically constrained to do another ASR style well. We do have replacement sites, but to do an addition, you know, we have one prospective site up near the reservoir that serves the golf course, but we don't, and it's not our land.
Who land is it? Seaside?
City of Seaside, yeah.
I think we need to work with them. That well will help them with their big project they got going over there in the future.
Yeah, but what's really needed and what we know has been needed for a number of years, and John and Marine and Monterey One Water and Cal-Am all got in a room and talked about it back in 2016. And that's more extraction capacity, even without injection capacity, for the whole system here on the north part of the service territory. Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope you start the discussions with all the parties involved, and we need to make a decision. And we sit up here and wait on Cal-Am. They might have to go through the PUC, and I prefer doing it ourselves because we don't have to go through the PUC. So and we can get this done. So I hope you and Mr. Laredo have good talks with them tomorrow. But look for the update. Any other questions on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that we went out to the public on this.
I'm on my way to them.
Okay.
Joel, let's open it up to the public.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
All right, what's the next item, GM?
Next item is still discussion. This is just a brief response to Director Riley's request to better understand how the district, whether or not we're paying attention to what's going on in the Salinas Valley with their groundwater sustainability plan and their agency. As you can see from the staff note, it's pretty much all John Lear all the time. And, you know, it's those 4 bullet points pretty much cover it. What that means is we're very well informed. Selectively, John can participate. Probably a lot like some of you, I get all of the emails from the team that's working on the GSP. And so occasionally things come across my attention, but John's actually sleeves rolled up involved in the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee for the Monterey Sub-Area, which is the one that we abut here, Seaside Basin. And John has kind of been involved with the overall progress of the GSA. So, yeah, it's a small fraternity of specialized groundwater people. So I think, you know, John stays involved just to keep apprised of everything that's going on.
I just want to make sure we're looking not only at what's happening in the short term, but what is likely to be the long-term infrastructure problems that they're kind of leaning toward. And as they lean toward something, I just hope we see if there's a role for us in that infrastructure dialogue. It's concerning to me somewhat, and I hear this at Watermaster, but also hear it when I'm around talking to people. Well, so what happens when it's 25 years from now? And I always keep reminding myself as well as others that this. And I forget who the name of the person was, but they said if you're in the water business and you're not planning 20 years out, you're not planning. And so that's so absorbed, completely absorbed by me. And so that's what I'm just looking about. Let's just stay alert to what looks like the direction they're going. And then if there's a role that we might play, I'm not looking at a leadership necessarily role, but a role that we might be a partner in or a participant in, because we also want to be part of that long-term solution.
Understood. John, did you want to add anything there?
Sure. I was just going to state that the plan is largely still coming together. A lot of the first part of this has been technical studies to understand the area and magnitude of the real problems, and then there have been multiple proposed projects, none of which have come to the forefront and been selected. So it's still in pretty preliminary understanding the problem and pushing forward quite a few proposed projects, as well as beginning to talk about policies and possible pumping reduction policies. And so none of those have really come forward from the technical groups to the more larger group, which is just the Salinas Valley Sustainability Agency Regular Board.
So it's still early, is what you're saying.
It's still preliminary, and but Dave's right about the fraternity of people. I still see Joe Oliver about every month. So.
Well, he's still around?
He's working for Salinas group area, so he sits in those meetings.
All right, tell him I say hello next time you see him.
Will do.
Any other questions on this? If none, let's open it up to the public, Joel.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 4, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. What's the next item, Jim?
Yeah, next item is an update on the Pure Water Monterey expansion construction bid schedule. Not a whole lot there because it's a very dependent schedule on both the PUC making a proposed and final decision, as well as a funding agreement. It does appear that we will be using federal WIFIA, the Water Infrastructure Finance Innovation Act, WIFIA. And kudos to Mike McCullough at Monterey One Water, who's been bird dogging that with his team. It looks like we've got authorization in the $60+ million range, which should be sufficient. But I've given you 3 dates in the staff note. September 19th, which is the expected earliest or latest date of the proposed decision. Then they typically assign it to a voting meeting. I figured it would probably be the second voting meeting in October rather than the first. That would be October 26th. And then final approval on or about November 1st. We did go back and look at decisions that have been made in the past, and it's typically on the order of 40 to 41 days between a proposed decision and a final is issued. And this kind of matches that. So from the standpoint of construction award, we really can't advertise, we could advertise after the proposed decision. I don't think that we want to advertise until we know that it's a project. But, you know, I think that we would be able to do so prior to signing the water purchase agreement, but you certainly wouldn't award. And then, you know, once the decision's final, we're going to have to fully execute the water purchase agreement. So even though all three parties have agreed to agree, you know, with a little short MOU that says we agree to sign it, you know, I'm sure that that'll be, you know, it'll take a little bit of time. And we certainly don't want to do an award until we've got a signed water purchase agreement and frankly, a signed financing agreement. So all of those will fall into place. The design is progressed pretty much to the level it needs. But we're just waiting on actions that surround these three dates that I've put in the staff note. I used to do so many things on a parallel track, and I've gotten really sequential with this one, which is just give us a proposed decision that says you can do the expansion, and then we can make the rest of the things fall into place. Because otherwise we don't have a new and large scale water supply project. So.
Well, I gotta ask this. If Cal-Am built right now, will we still do this project? Because I would be pushing this project.
If they
Still do it as public agencies, still do this project without Cal-Am. That's been my biggest point all along, because it's a project that needs to be done. And I think we could convince the public that this is the project to do next instead of wait for that desal. So
yeah,
just tell me.
Yeah, we did look at that, and the answer is yes. There are ways to do this project.
We need to start thinking like that right now.
Yeah, the challenge will be, of course, if it's not for solving a particular problem that needs to be solved, then our partner may not feel as motivated. So in other words, if we were doing it to generate water to maybe do protected water levels in the Seaside Basin, that's different than relieving the CDO and, you know, it's on Monterey One Water's land and it's within their building and so forth. So, you know,
Dave, without a water purchase agreement,
right?
How do you do the financing?
Well, you could do the financing off the district's ability to raise fees and charges, but we would have to have a purpose for the water, and the only purpose would have to, you know, it would have to have a benefit to the folks. It would be a, you know, Monterey Peninsula Water Resources Protection kind of thing, but that's going to raise a whole bunch of public outcry as to, you know, how fair is it that I'm paying for you to put replenishment water in the ground for the Seaside Basin when I didn't cause the problem living over here in Carmel Valley, or until recently I didn't get any of the benefit, you know. So it would not be easy and it would not be quick, but it's certainly doable.
And that's why I wanted to hear, because we need to start moving ahead. Move ahead and do as much as we can do without Cal-Am being involved, because we can do it. We can do it. I've seen somebody from Monterey One Water, director over there, and he feels the same way, that we can start moving this along if we can.
Well, we got 49 days to find out if it's a signed water purchase agreement, and that would be the best outcome. So,
well, I hope it comes through, but if it don't, I think we need to prepare for that. What I've been talking about for years. Any other questions? Go ahead there, Karen.
Oh, through the chair, yeah. We had this discussion several months ago. I think originating the Water Supply Committee, and we asked Dave Stoll to map out how it could be done by the two public agencies. So, and he just kind of ran us through that again. So, yeah, I mean, I certainly haven't forgotten, you know, I mean, it's got to be done. We need it. It's got to be done. So it's good to, unfortunately, as Dave just repeated, it's, not easy and not quick, but it is possible. And so this is important to know.
Okay, any questions, Director Raleigh?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Joel, let's ask the public if they have any comments on this one.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Chair Edwards, I see no raised hand. Oh, actually, take that back. Let me share my screen here. And are you able to see the timer?
Yes,
John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, committee members. Can you hear me all right?
okay, here you good there, Mr. Tilly.
Two things. I'd like to ask if there would be an idea of how soon the timeline for completion of the expansion would be available. This it sounds to me as if maybe any elementary piece of the project with the longest timeline for delivery could probably, drive the process. So when do we think we'll see a timeline for the completion of the project? That's my first question. My second question is I'd like to ask Alvin who it is that he spoke with over at M1W that was on board with that. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a mayor candidate. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, let me address the schedule issue. There has been a schedule out fairly regularly for the Recycled Water Committee, and we've shown it to the board a couple of times. It hasn't been fully updated as of right now. They're spending, quite a bit of time looking, as we just did, at, when do these things come home to roost, because you can't award, without certain commitments. But I suspect there will be a new printed schedule here in the next several weeks, updated versus what's been out there. I think the last Recycled Water Committee at Monterey One Water, there was a verbal report, but no executive level Gantt chart. But it will get revised.
My general memory is 30 to 36 months from approval.
Yeah, well, actually, the original schedule was less than that. It was about 20 months from the approvals. And so we were saying about 26 months from the start of the application. And obviously the PUC process is longer than we had expected. I think right now the scrutiny is not only on the timing of these agreements, bid and award, but and the WIFIA loan agreement. But, as we get closer, we're going to learn a lot about long lead time items and supply chain issues and things like that. So we're in a different environment right now than we were just when we started this process, like a year ago. And so I think people are sharpening their pencils on that, and we'll see some of that factored in here shortly. The performance start date for the project is delivery of water March 31st of 2025, which we always thought was long. That gave us a lot of room. But here we are with the PUC process taking us into September, and then signing and so forth, we'll probably be into October and maybe even November. So then you go, boy, 26 months from that would be into 2025. So right at. So, if the schedule can hold and if supply chain issues don't interrupt it, we should be fine, but we would be eating away at that buffer that was built in. So all of that is something that, if I think Dave and Fran and Karen will have an opinion on this, but if an ALJ wrote up a proposed decision, just decided to get it done a month ahead of time and deliver that to us next week, that could help us get more clarity. But what's the likelihood of that?
Fran's shaking her head.
No likelihood whatsoever.
No,
I
think
think Cal-Am probably won't like that either. That's too fast. That's getting
Well-
something done.
well, I think whenever a assigned commissioner puts a scoping memo out and puts a date in it, that date gets pretty hardwired in their calendar at that point, which is got to get my stuff done that's ahead of it in line, and let's get the last stuff done before the date I committed to. So it's probably mid-September. But yeah, there's just, I don't want to say there's a lot of moving parts, but there's just, you know, uncertainty about calendar right now because we just don't know.
Well, like I mentioned, I talked to one of the directors over there, and with the 75-25 split, it's a good idea because they're not putting that, they're putting 25% of, we're the ones that got to make that big decision because it's 75%. So we had a chat and he looked like he was agreeable because of 75-25. Okay, any more public comment?
Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Any more questions on this one? If not, we'll move to the next item.
All right. The final is that we, on June 20th, July 20th, Cal-Am submitted its initial testimony in the phase 2 portion of the current application that's out in front of the PUC. And that portion is about supplies and demands related to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. And I've summarized some of the positions that were taken in that testimony in the bullet points. I think the broad brushstrokes are that on the demand side, Cal-Am, rightly or wrongly, I think we're going to come down on the side of wrongly, has included multiple things such as water for RENA housing numbers, water for legal lots of record, on top of water for population growth. I don't want to use the word triple counting, but houses don't use water. The people who live in them do. So if you project population growth, they're either going to live in existing housing stock or the new housing stock that has to be built. But you build it on legal lots of record, and they don't start using water till the people move into them. So it's apparent to us that there's some overstatement of the demands. And if you start with a forecast, which forecasts two things, residential demand and commercial demand, then that forecast in and of itself, and in this case, AMBAG's regional growth forecast, already captures economic growth for the commercial side and captures population growth for the residential side. And so we're giving it a very keen eye as to what's being suggested in their testimony. And philosophically, aren't some of these things already included in the baseline forecast and not added on top? So you'll see a lot of work regarding that. And then on the water supply side, what we're seeing is a heavy discounting of the water supply project for pure water expansion and the aquifer storage and recovery project. And again, philosophically, if you diminish the amount of supply that's available and exaggerate the amount of demand that's required, you can do the math in your own head. It's going to require more new water projects than less. And so that's what we're seeing in the testimony. Our team, John Lear and Maureen Hamilton, will be working on trying to deal with how ASR is treated in the testimony. And then Monterey One Water will be dealing with how Pure Water Monterey source waters and performance are treated in the testimony. Fundamentally, I wouldn't advise to you, my board members, to enter into a contract that has a performance guarantee every year if you were going to be in breach of it every year. And the assumption that we're seeing is that's what CalAm has said. Well, you're never going to get the performance you want from Pure Water Monterey expansion, and therefore it will underperform, and you're going to need some other resource to make up for that underperformance. It's an interesting leap, but that being said, we're in pretty good agreement on a lot of the other major resources. Slight disagreement over the treatment of Sand City desal and some things that were overlooked, but the big ones, the Seaside Groundwater Basin, I think we even go a step further than they do. Their point is that the in-lieu recharge of the Seaside Groundwater Basin of 700 acre-feet per year for 25 years would kick in after 2030 when a new desal plant comes online and makes excess water available. Our whole approach remains to look at the supplies versus the demands without a desal plant, but with the intention of providing that 700 acre-feet per year of in-lieu recharge at Seaside Basin. That's kind of our starting point, and then to look and see if we're confident enough in our assumptions to say that's not only possible, but there will still be excess water available for unforeseen contingencies and peaking, maximum max day, peak hour type calculations. So it's right now it's really one-sided. We can read theirs, but ours isn't quite ready yet, although Fran got 30 pages of the first part of it today. And so we're off to the races. I just got a thumbs up. Two of them.
Yeah. I have a question.
Mr. Edwards, you're on mute.
Well, go ahead, Director Paul.
Assuming there is population growth and commercial growth down the road, could recycling be expanded someday? I'm not saying in the short term, but in the future, could more recycling, assuming there's more wastewater because there are more people, more businesses, could the recycling be expanded further?
Yeah, there's kind of two pieces of that. The increase in population will produce more flows. And Monterey One Water is over there with their lobbyists working really hard to make sure that systems that use a high percentage of recycled water for potable delivery get a little better exemption or relief from the indoor water use requirements that Hertzberg's proposing. So that has one effect. The other effect is there is still going to be winter wastewater because the growing season, unless we get to full year growing season, which we seem to be getting closer and closer, but November through March, there's still significant wastewater flows that go out. We're capturing some of that right now and some of that for pure water expansion. But at the end of the day, these plants have been designed to operate in a much more steady state. And that water is available just for a few months of the year. So it would require kind of a peaking plant where just for a few months of the year, you capture those wastewater flows that are still going out the outfall. So that'll represent kind of the last big chunk of available water, but you'd have to build a plant that can be turned up in November and turned down in March, and then storage might become an issue. But there will still be wastewater out there.
George, go ahead. We're up.
Is this application before the PUC, is this a rate setting? Does that qualify for rate setting?
No, this was an update. It was just a simple request to update supply and demand numbers related to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. And because that project already had its decision in September of 2018, that was the rate making piece of it. You know, the PUC in effect said, go ahead and build it and recover it all in rates. And were the other permitting entities that, you know, threw the wrench into the works. But now they're saying, upon further review, we'd like to learn a little bit more with the passage of time, really what is going on down there? How much demand is there? How much supply do you need? And that's what this is going to. Fran, go ahead.
Well, what bothers me about all of the calculations and the points of view that CalAM has expressed already in their submission, it's all related to supply and demand, which is okay. But what I do not get is an update of the costs from their project. And if that's never included in the calculation or the discussion, then how is there ever a realistic picture that's being painted?
And go ahead
I
and
need
make
to
your point.
rephrase. Dave,
Go ahead, Frank.
when CalAM filed the application that we're talking about now, they asked for authorization to enter into the amended water purchase agreement and recover costs.
Yeah,
And so the costs that are associated with their improvements, meaning the parallel pipeline, the 4 extraction wells, and the pump station that they built at Rancho San Carlos Road and Carmel Valley Road, they've got a price tag of $80 million.
yeah.
So there is, while it was authorized in 2018 as part of their original Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project, this is more, this second phase, this expansion phase was not approved in the
Right.
first one. It wasn't ready for approval. So George, you are correct that there is rate setting associated with this, and CalAM has been adamant they will not proceed without cost recovery. And that was something that we raised in our reply brief, meaning if they don't get everything that they asked for financially, because we did challenge some of the costs, does that mean that they wouldn't proceed with the project? And then we said they have an obligation to serve. So bottom line, there is rate setting associated with it.
Yeah,
Round figure 80 billion, plus the cost that we're looking at for Monterey 1 expansion, and that's another 50+ million. Dave, is that correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I kind of forgot about phase 1. And what they've attempted to do is say, hey, groundwater replenishment, you know, the name prior to Pure Water Monterey, was part of the initial application. And therefore the expansion is part of the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. And therefore, there are a lot of previously sunk costs, pre-construction, legal, permitting, that kind of thing, that have been reallocated to the Pure Water Monterey expansion capital improvements because of their view that it's all part of the original Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. So that's how it gets to 80 million for, you know, there are millions and millions of pre-construction costs that are being allotted, you know, like administrative overhead. Think of it that way. You know, here's a bunch of money that got spent on environmental work, long letters from attorneys, you know, those kinds of things.
Well, I'm reassured a little bit by what you're saying, but not completely, because there may be rate setting in what is the focus in phase 1. and the prior things that they've done with pipe expansion, pipe capacity expansion and so on, and the hookups. But I'm just concerned about the basic desal, which is the underlying argument that Cal-Am is going to be making. And when do those numbers get updated?
Yeah, well, if you read the pine cone, somebody asked for those numbers to be updated, but people have a right to know.
So I wonder, let's hope they ask the question again.
A question of mine is, okay, I got Cal-Am testimony on this. Now, what I've been asking for in the future, or if you can get this done, have you ran those numbers against the expansion project? Can the expansion project hold it? And Mr. Laredo and Fran, do we have to wait? Should we bring it public, or should we hold it for testimony? Because I think the public needs to see what Cal-Am has done, like I'm seeing right here. And then I like what Dave was saying, well, they overcounted this, they overcounted that. Let's do it the right way and show the public. Do we have to wait to do that? Or would y'all on mute?
And you're on mute.
We are doing that right now, Director Edwards. The second phase is basically look at what the commission assumed were the correct supply and demand figures in their 2018 decision, and tell us now in 2022 if those assumptions are still accurate. And so Cal-Am looks at their urban water management plan, and they look at the RENA numbers, and they come up with what Dave described, which is an exaggeration of demand and a diminution of supply. We are responding to that now.
Okay.
Now, there is no, what I need to finish with is there is no phase 3, meaning does the community still need their desalination project? When Cal-Am submitted this application, they put very narrow parameters on it. The ALJ, the administrative law judge, agreed with those parameters and literally used the expression, there is no phase 3 yet. And so what we have to do is successfully show that their evaluation is wrong, our evaluation is correct. And that would set us up for phase 3. But we are responding now to what is the projected supply and demand as we know it now, particularly with the RENA numbers that have come out, where our demand has been, what the state is requiring as far as future restrictions on per capita water use, particularly inside structures. All of that is being addressed now.
Okay, but my question is, can we share that with the public now, or do we have to wait? That's my big, I want the public to see this.
Yeah.
Can we share it?
We can share it when we file and serve, which is on August the 19th. It is a public document at that time.
Thank you. That's what I would like to see that at a future meeting. Go ahead there, Cam.
Yeah, maybe after we serve the testimony and it becomes public, we could prepare a brief summary for the public, like one to 2 pages, and put it on our website.
Well, I like to bring it to the board meeting, if you will, and show the public, this is what they proposed, this is what we got, and this is what we turned in. Because I want that supply and demand updated. And if they want to update it, I want the public to see it being updated to what we believe. You know, the Reno numbers are not official yet, and unless I'm wrong, but they're not official. They just put them out there. They're going to try to make them official sometime during the year, but those numbers are not official. So y'all correct me if I'm right or wrong on that one, but we're using those numbers. So we need to show the public, this is what they got. I like your notes in here. I got one more question too on that. Residential demand, we've been talking about that 48 gallons on bullet 3, and Cal-Am says it's going to be raised to 52 gallons. isn't that in reverse?
Yeah, one would think that it's in reverse. I don't have a degree in economics, but I'm pretty sure if I can use all the water I want to today because it comes out of my tap, I'd probably use whatever I want, but certainly more than I would at 160% more expensive in some date in the future. So.
Well, okay, I like the staff report, and I just want us to bring that out public of what we have. So, especially on supply and demand. Okay, go ahead, Director Rao.
No, I just want to add, it seemed like it's such common sense. When Dave put his original supply and demand report together, he projected a phase-in rate. And that is such a logical thing to include. I just don't understand how it can be so logical and so ignored by Cal-Am. I don't get that split. You gotta be, it's a first grader compared to a high schooler. It's a no-brainer. And Cal-Am insists on playing the no-brainer game. I mean, it's a no-brainer for our side. Anyway, it's not very smart.
You better stop while you're ahead.
That's right.
Okay, if no other questions, Joel, could you open up to the public, please?
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Mr. Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. What's the next item, Jim?
I think that was it.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? Anything for the future?
Just one quick question. When is our next meeting likely? Is it 2 months from now about?
Yes.
Okay.
If none other, hey, at the next meeting, I hope we can get an update on ASR 1 or future injection well or something. And y'all come up with a decision. If none,
Good luck tomorrow.
well, we gave them a lot today, so they know where we're going. All right, if not, meeting adjourned. Have a good week.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.